Fortunately, this winter on December, no, that's okay.
No, she's signaling to me,
Oh, she
not
wants-
to you.
Oh.
You see, there's the lens.
Okay,
it's
okay.
right there.
I
And
can't
you see that shiny object. You see.
Oh, I'm
this,
not- I'm
and
not
it's-
blind.
Oh no, she loves you.
I know,
She
I know.
loves you.
I'm just saying
We
that-
all love you.
I say to the people on the street when they almost bump into me and all, or whatever happens, I say, oh, I'm half blind, I'm sorry. But that doesn't help at all. They're still bumping into me and moving their bicycles. Anyway, we are going to do, we have been given a permit
Oh my God.
to do the summer solstice in the park up there at noon, December
Winter.
21st.
That's the
The
summer.
city has found it
Winter.
in its kindness to allow us to do acoustic music from the Baroque period called Caracteres de la Danse
By
Jean
Jean
Fery
Rebel.
Rebel.
Jean Fery
And
Rebel.
it takes 8 minutes. For you it takes 10 or 12. On the YouTube it's 8 minutes, but on you for 10 or 12.
That's
So
right.
we're going to be playing this and other music in the park noon, December 21st, with some dancers doing their thing, right?
I'll give you a poetic rendition.
Insidious.
Okay. Okay. This is a piece that was designed for a particular dancer, virtuoso dancer in the 1700s, and now I can't remember her name. But we have records of what she did because they had dance notation back then. They actually had two different forms of it. And I worked with a gentleman who knew both forms of it and was quite serious about it. And he was so serious about it that nothing else existed in the world other than this dance notation and his costume. And we did this piece in several different occasions. And but he didn't base the dances actually on the dances as listed. He based it on commedia dell'arte characters. So, for instance, an old man in love, hopelessly in love, and things
Is that
like
the
that.
minuet?
But that, well, it was a bunch of things. But anyhow, the dances are the courante, the minuet, the bourrée, the sarabande, the gigue. These are all standard
really?
dances of the time. The rigodon, the passe-pied, the gavotte, the lour, the musette, and then the sonate. But all of them are strung together, one after another. Now, I have to make... Shh, quietly happy. Okay, I have to take one pause. Normally I wouldn't do it, but I have a page turn because I brought one music stand. And so at one point, it's not over. I'm turning the page. Okay, just be aware of that. It is
So you're
not
gonna play
over.
the whole thing?
What?
You're gonna play all the themes?
I'm going to play the whole thing. And you're going to sit here and you're going to listen to the whole thing. Okay?
What is the name of the piece?
It's called Les Caracteres de la Danse, the characters of the dance.
Nice.
That's which Minerva initially told you, as a matter of fact. You must always listen carefully to Minerva, because she always, being the goddess of wisdom, she always has plenty of things to impart. And you should be all ears when she starts talking. Okay, that's all I can say. Okay, I think we're ready to go, and hopefully the flute will play, and that's that.
You want the lights up a little bit?
It would be wonderful if they're up a little bit because.
Oh, excuse me.
Okay, good.
Whoa, boy, oh boy. Okay, wow.
that okay?
Okay, now that's
So,
let there be light.
to
Lux,
see it.
lux sit, lux eterna, lux perpetua. You should know this.
I do.
Yeah, indeed. Okay, and so should you, Minerva.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Here we go. Now, if you were the dancer, I worked with the dancer, they'd be completely bathed in sweat. That's what they were like, yeah. You know the dancer. It was Alan Jones. Charda Jones.
Oh, C. Jones, Alan C. Jones.
Alan T. Jones.
Oh, T. Jones.
Yeah.
Charda was the
Charda,
C.
yes, yeah.
Yeah, he was a model for me.
He was a model for you, exactly.
And
That's
actually,
right.
I wish I could find the drawing I did of him in this costume. That would be a nice
Yeah, that's right.
advertisement. It was so beautiful. There are like 11 dances in there. Each one changes a little bit.
That's right.
Yeah.
Especially this is the particular writer of this music likes to use the hemiola, the form called it's a hemiola, where you change between 3 and 2. An example of that. Hello. Thank you. An example of that is actually in Bernstein's A West Side Story. That's an example. 1 2 3 1 2 3 1 2 1 2 1 2 1 2 3 1 2 3 1 2 1 2 1 2. That's it.
Yeah, Rubeck song too, and also flamenco.
Yes.
Some of the Turkish stuff, but also flamenco has
Yes,
that
that's
happening
right.
in it.
Yeah.
I forget which one, Alegrias or
Right. Exactly.
whatever.
Exactly.
So they were doing the minuet with this?
Oh, the minuet was in here somewhere.
Can you imagine them like?
Minuets are very
Andrew
important.
Jay says take 5.
No, Blue Run out.
Like, take 5.
Blue Run Alan Turk.
Why were minuets important? That's
What?
what they did.
Well, because they represented diplomacy. And so, because if you study a minuet, actually, minuet is a very clever dance, because what happens is you have a large group of people, men and women, and by the end of the dance, everybody gets to dance with everybody.
Alex, very
That's
interesting.
and it's
In
very
our
and you have to
common
be you have to behave a certain way. And so, for instance, they said about George Washington that he danced a really incredible minuet, meaning that he was a statesman. It was very important for people, at least in Europe, that they know how to dance.
Yes,
It's
yes.
very important in terms of understanding everything else about being a statesman.
Giving something to the wives.
Well,
With the power being
Yeah, but did they-
control.
Oh, it's fascinating. This same dancer, Alan Jones, had me work with him in the School of Visual Arts, and this was in the 1990s. And so there were a lot of art students who were in punk fashion. You know, they had what is it? Paper. They had clothes. They had safety pins in their nose, in their ears, everywhere. Think about it. And they were of course wearing engineer boots and things like that. And he very calmly proceeded to sort of. And they also had the hair, the incredible hair. And he proceeded to teach them the minuet. And they all kind of thought it was kind of silly, and then they realized, oh, this is incredible, because you can meet someone without committing to them in any way, you know. And we did this particular dance, the Characters of a Dance, in a show at the Gowanus Canal, which was all contemporary dancers, and then we did this with Alan in his Louis XIV outfit and everything. But his dance, this particular dance was more modern than anything that was being done, because the dances that were being done were quite literal. There were two women who were doing this dance where they were chained to each other, and they were sort of pulling each other around, and then when they get close, they punch each other. I mean, I can't think of anything more literal than that. See, there was nothing stood for anything other than what it was. That was literal. So you see.
But did they keep in time with the beat?
Did they keep?
That's funny.
Well,
Every time the metal,
What was the style of the last one you played?
the piece that I was playing.
The last part of it.
Well, that was a so-called sonate, which is basically it's a preliminary form to when we got to the sonata form.
So many notes.
Yes, so many notes.
So
That's
how did they
exactly.
get to that?
Well, actually, that's in terms of this piece. This is a string piece. This is a violin piece. Normally.
wow.
And so the problem with it is, for me, is that I'm a wood player.
Yeah.
You know, and it's sort of like having a bow that has a definite end. And so you have to work it out, and I made several. I'll admit I made several mistakes here, but that actually had to do with the light. Is that no one noticed? That's his smoke detector. You see,
is that pure Baroque style? Or
This is Baroque, this is a Baroque piece, that's right.
Yeah,
That's
is
right.
it, but what form is not a fugue or anything? I mean,
Oh, no, this is not a fugue. These are dance forms.
Dance forms.
And dance forms were written, you know, to be listened to also. But everybody who'd be in the audience would undoubtedly know what the dances were. And they would relate to the pieces and listening to what they could do. And maybe their little twinkle toes might be working as they sat there. Yeah.
But also they call it music for choreographed music. It's
Like
written
ballet.
Well,
for
this was,
someone to dance.
this was,
Not just listen, but dance.
Misinformed. I thought that choreography began in the 40s for dance.
no, choreography.
Isn't it like
This is-
pre-ballet?
No.
This reminds me of a song by Irving Berlin, which he wrote towards the end of his career, that the trouble nowadays is we don't have hoofers, we have choreographers.
Oh, right.
And a friend of mine who is a choreographer was complaining about how she's going to be doing something at the whatever theater, you know, for dancers, and how much it's going to cost her. And I sent her a note back saying that the trouble is that she should hire some hoofers as opposed to choreographers. And I think she took me literally. I was insulting her. She thought I was insulting her. And I said, what you do is you should get Mickey and Judy and Ann Miller and get a barn and put on a show. It'll be a lot cheaper than what you're calling for. Yeah, that was it, but she didn't like
How much
that.
did it cost to get Mickey Mouse?
No, well, I was thinking of Mickey Rooney. You see, that's the old bit of Judy Garland and Mickey Rooney. These endless films they did. We'll put on a show. We'll have a barn.
Tap
That's
dance
it. Yeah,
and all that.
that's right.
So Roger can do the rhythm of the Dave Brubeck. So for the listening public, can he come up? He has an ear. He has. Can you just sit there and do it?
Just a little.
Yeah, he's going to just show that rhythm as an example. He has a safety pin in his ear.
He has a
too.
safety pin in his ear.
Yes. Now everyone
I
listen
have
to the
three safety
rhythm.
pins, but I can't
It's
show
not
them.
that-
Listen to the rhythm.
It's just that, you know, it's that one-off timeout, you know?
Yes. That's right.
Yeah, like-
Thank you, Roger.
Yes.
Very nice.
And I'll point out happily that about in the late '70s, I premiered a work by Dave Brubeck that he wrote for me, and a guitarist. Yes.
Oh, wow.
That he wrote
Can
for
you
me,
Do
and
you
he-
have any YouTube of it yet?
Can you?
No,
We don't have
we
any-
did it. We did it at the Guggenheim Museum,
Oh,
other
really?
places.
Wow.
Yes, we did it. That's right.
Wow.
That's right.
Wow.
I see this.
Works in
Minerva, you
progress.
see, the trick is you start at the top and then spend a long career working
On the bottom.
diligently to go down. You see, that's.
I started at the bottom, Andrew,
You
and
started
I
at the
still haven't
bottom.
hit top.
Well,
I still at the bottom.
Me too. I started at the bottom, working my way up.
the trouble, the poor Dave Brubeck, his real problem was the piece that he's famous for was one that he never wrote.
He didn't write
What's that
that
one?
one.
No, that was written by Paul Desmond. That was written by the
Which one?
saxophonist. The saxophonist.
Oh.
Take Five.
Oh, Take Five
was
with
written
that
by Paul
rhythm,
Desmond.
That's that rhythm.
No, that's a different piece.
That's a different. Oh, yeah.
Yes.
So do a sample of the Dave Brubeck you did at the.
Oh, I
Guggenheim.
can't. I don't have the right flute. I have to have a modern flute for
Oh,
that.
that little
It's very.
silver.
It goes very high. It goes very
Oh, no.
low.
Oh.
It had one quote from. The theme of the movie Man and a Woman. Da 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 da.
It's a waltz.
Yeah, and that's in 5/8. That's in 5/8. So
Is this flute a period flute or
this is a period flute.
Ah,
Actually, technically, it's not.
a lute or a flute?
It's a flute. It's a flute. It's a flute.
It's a handmade one,
But
right?
it's handmade. Actually, the man who made this flute actually came to the studio several times. Peter Noy.
Peter Noy.
Peter Noy came to this one
Canada, right?
a year ago, and he came to the previous studio
Oh,
with
yeah.
his son. Yes, from Canada,
Yeah.
although he lives in
And he
Seattle.
draws. He likes
He
to
draws.
draw.
He draws very nicely,
Yeah.
by the way. That's right.
Anyway, let's thank Andrew again.
Yes.
That was a wonderful
Okay.
presentation.
We talked about it. That's the main one.
I
A great
forgot that I was going
lecture.
to be introducing Daniel Shapiro to report.
Oh, yes.
So I
I'm sorry,
don't really
I'm
have much
sorry.
to say about him other than that he's a friend of Elizabeth Hellman's, which is a high recommendation for him, and that probably most of the people here already know who he is, and that he just had a book published
Wow.
called
Wow.
Child with the Swan's Wings.
Wow.
Yes, and so may I introduce?
Who published it?
Dos Madras Press. Well,
Dos
I'll be talking
Madres,
about
that I
that.
can remember.
Dos
Dos
Madres.
Madres is easy to remember.
Yeah,
Just
yeah.
this year.
I'll go this
And
way.
so let's all
your Tootsie.
welcome Daniel.
Okay.
What's the name of your thing?
Child with a swan's wings.
Wait, child?
Child with a swan's wings.
Child with the swan's wings.
You
Okay.
got it.
Now we have a poet reading from his most recent book, published by Dos Madras Press this year, I believe, right?
Yeah.
Child with the Swan's Wings. And-
What's his name?
Oh, his name is Daniel Shapiro. Can we welcome Daniel?
Okay, first, I'd like to thank Minerva. Special thanks for this invitation. And kudos and ongoing congratulations for all the great work you're doing here at the Spring Studio. And also special thanks to Elizabeth for helping make this possible. So I'm going to read from, mostly from my new collection, but I'm also going to read a few poems from my two other ones to help lead into that. So first, so hopefully there'll be something for everybody. So first I'm going to read from my first collection. It's called The Red Handkerchief and Other Poems. And again, all the books were published by Dos Madras Press, which is based in a little town called Loveland, Ohio. That sort of reminded me of that town in Blue Velvet. That interesting and weird town in Blue Velvet. I've never actually been there, but anyway. That's just my own fantasy world. Okay, so I'm going to take my glasses off because I'm very nearsighted and I can see better when I read. Okay, first poem is called, can everyone hear me?
Yes.
I'll project as much as I can.
Yeah.
Okay. First poem is called Disguise. Tonight at the mirror, I admire my upper lip, the stubble growing darker each day. I keep dreaming of disguises, thick handlebars of hair, the great Fu Manchu, one like gables, pencil thin, to make women swoon. In old photos, my father was his double, until his face got recast into long Russian jowls and an apple nose, a black brush just beneath him. He was a man who scribbled faces on his eggs before releasing the yolks. In the bowl, the floating globes like twin suns. Now I imagine mine becoming his, no matter how I disguise it. I see his nose jutting out of my brow in 10 years, hair becoming yellow-gray and thin. I keep glancing, behind me, into the mirror, my face blank as an M. That was written some years ago.
Can we applaud these poems?
Okay, the next poem was inspired by a visit to a medium. She was a little old lady who did her thing at a kitchen table in San Diego, California. And I had the opportunity to go to her, and it was really a profound experience for me. So I'm going to read this poem. Part of it is, her voice comes in and out of the poem. So at times she's speaking, at times the speaker of the poem is speaking. So this is called The Medium. When I'm sitting here alone, the dear Lord uses half his energy. This table weighs 30 pounds. He has to magnetize my hands. Adele Tinning's hands pose a question I can't explain. I follow her gestures, the thread she unwinds, imagining wires, special muscles in her arms, until a breeze fluffs the curtains in the window. That's a spirit, dear, that puff of wind. In a Polaroid, a bolt of light forks from her infant son's head. Honeycombed spirals pass under the table, whose lead glows blue. She touches a seam in the bird's eye maple. She calls her spirit guides, Matthew and John, but Zorro comes in. He doesn't touch the floor like the others. Ask him to tell you what stage you're in. 7 stages like the 7 ages of man. He says I have only love to learn. I ask for my grandmother, who enters the table, tapping out Esther against linoleum. She makes it creak and tip in my lap. She must have talked fast because she's tipping fast. Wishes me fortune and the table leg slams. Send out a light beam, they'll come right over. Even from China, there are souls on all of Saturn's rings. A spirit can travel through heat or cold. It's at 0 degrees. So if you feel a little chill, you'll know. That's a short version. It was a really, like I said, it was a very profound experience visiting her. Gave me a whole new perspective on life and death. The next poem actually goes back in time more to around the time of the Cuban Missile Crisis, when I was in elementary school. And, yeah, and I went to a school called Robbins Lane Elementary School in Syosset, New York. And we used to have to do the,
Under the table?
not under the table, you have to go into the gym. So this poem draws on that. What I realized is that I actually conflated 2 times because I had a very great Spanish teacher in junior high school. Her name was Mrs. Bedard, and she made a very big impression on me. So she makes an appearance in this poem, even though that was later. It's not too important, I think. It sort of works. So there's a little bit of Spanish in here, and there's a little bit of history, and anyway, it should all be clear. Incident at Robbins Lane School. Mrs. Bedard sets down the needle on the scratchy record. Cuando salí de Cuba, escuchen. Her black eyes glinting remember rumbas under florid skies. She tugs her earlobe, and the fake pearl clipped to it rattles to the floor. The pale gray tiles echo grids on the ceiling and windows. We're locked in. But even Luisito's crackling tenor voice, or Mrs. Bedard's sprayed helmet of hair, the joy of her limbs as she claps and sings, can't protect us from a fear mounting the air, a gray, spiked fear building to storm when the sirens begin. Missiles raining over Robbins Lane School, red-hot missiles stamped in Spanish, communist agitprop missiles stamped with bears. A dangerous island is the beachhead of our fears. We have to stop them, the principal says, as he leads us in anthem, the loose flesh quivering on his arms. We have to make them back down. We have to crouch, facing the wall, in the dark gym, our fingers laced behind our heads, protect our skulls. What was funny about that poem is that, or that experience, is that I didn't realize until years and years later what the hell was going on, why we were doing that, and that it had to do with the Cuban Missile Crisis. Of course, we learned very little about Cuba in those years. Okay, so the next poem actually follows from that, and this poem draws on my own experience in Cuba. I had the chance to travel there in 1990. Wow. And also things I read, and also Cuban friends of mine, some close Cuban friends. So there are a couple of references here. The 26th of July is the date associated with the triumph of the Cuban Revolution. And there's a reference to piruli, which was the toasted peanuts that are sold on the street, or were sold on the street. I don't know if they still are. Okay. So this has a read-in title. In the paper, I read a story about a man who on the 26th of July fled what was for him a prisoned island. No soap, no toothpaste, no lights. When he returned home by bike along the Malecon. No rice or beans some days. There were egg-only days. He joined the line for a slice of pizza. He gobbled down. Still hungry, but the line had moved on. And when his friend, who was obviously gay, sighed a vague complaint outside Coppelia, he was sent off the following Monday to cut cane. His maiden aunt, whose Olympian name inspired him at times, wrote from 07832, promised to claim him, to invent a scheme, but no telegram came. No plan the bearded president was not aware of, even the joke about the peanut vendor at the celebration in the plaza. Every time he raised his voice, Fidel was piqued by the vendor's shouts of Piruli! If that noisemaker continues much longer, I'm going to kick him 90 miles over the Florida Keys. The entire crowd began chanting, Piruli! It may have begun when he spotted the gringo at Santa Maria del Mar. He called him over and said, don't worry, I only want to ask you a question. Would you exchange your t-shirt for my one? Porque me encanta ese azul. The shirt's royal blue bled into sky, and the welcoming sea invited him to flee. So he rode by bus one Sunday east of Varadero, and while the guards were inspecting passports, a compañero whistled him over to his jeep. It was heaped with suitcases, canvas tarpaulins. He'd boost him up through a vaulted door beneath the wing. You must be skinny to dodge the gears when the wheels retract. One was crushed, one died from exposure, and at 39,000 feet, one fell through the turquoise sky. His thoughts revolved beneath the tarpaulin from freedom to doom, and then the memory of his sister floated in, fanning herself beneath a giant flamboyant. That game they played as children, chasing hummingbirds hovering by the aloes, tossing a handful of sand to stun them. He wanted to trap their iridescence in his hand. Through a pinhole in the wing, he might pick out the castle in the harbor, the twin-scrolled columns of a Yankee monument crowning the bay, the arc of the Malecon tilting away into bleached whites and blues. But beyond his flight, a wall awaits him, a chicken wire fence that surrounds a camp to contain all the brown-skinned men and women arriving in boats, renegade planes, inflated tires washing into the Keys. Through the wire along the horizon, he will see the black ghosts of his countrymen, a trio of horsemen in fluttering robes, snowy as death, a towering cross whose angry welcome kindles the night. Sadly, this poem was written years ago, and I thought, well, this is probably going to be dated. It couldn't be more relevant. Okay, so let's move on.
Dangerously relevant.
Dangerously relevant.
Earth, what,
Yeah.
endangering the earth. Well,
Yes, endangering the earth, yeah. Okay, now I'd like to move to another book. This is A Woman at the Cusp of Twilight. This book was inspired by family anecdotes and photographs. This is my grandmother, or was my grandmother, in the early 20s. And their poems, it's sort of in the vein of Spoon River. And there are different characters that weave in and out of the book. So I'd like to read just a few that were inspired by my mother. And my mother, when she was a child, loved to dance. That was one of the things that she did. She's creative in other ways. She's still with us. She's not doing too well these days, but she's hanging in there.
That's amazing.
So this poem was inspired by a print, which is called The Winged Oriole. It was a very idealized print of a young girl in the garden with doves floating around her. And it was hanging in my grandparents' house when I was growing up. And I used to always look at that print, and somehow I confused the little girl in the print with my mother. So this is and the print is by an artist, probably many of you know, named Bessie Pease Gutman. No, she was an early American, I think early 20th century. This was done. Okay, so it's The Winged Oriole after Bessie Pease Gutman. In that print, a girl dances in a garden at dawn, doves floating around her in a rosy halo. I'm drawn to the light tread of her feet over cobblestones, her filmy nightgown rising and falling, the snow of wings. That girl could be my mother, seeking pixies behind the house, calling her name down a well, Shulamith. I reach out my hand, she pulls me in. Grass rustling, frisky crickets tickle my feet. She turns perfect pirouettes, leads me back to a shadowed doorway behind the cobblestones, cool as limestone, far from boredom, where hours never pass, punctuated by shrill rings. My spiraling thoughts steep with hydrangeas, magenta blue in the honeysuckle twilight. Out the window, sparrows alight, and when it darkens, glimmering wings, a host of pixies circles my room. And pixies, of course, my mother told me, she and her brother used to go out and we went to look for the pixies. Elves, so that's sort of captured my imagination. The next poem has a little bit of a darker theme, also sadly relevant. My mother's family lived in Sheepshead Bay, Brooklyn, and they were the only Jewish family on the block. This is in the 30s. And of course, or unfortunately, there was anti-Semitism. So she had to walk through a gauntlet of kids who used to tease and taunt her on her way to school. So that's what this poem, that's what inspired this poem. So, or that's what provoked this poem, I should say. A lesson. You had to pass them along Neck Road, every day on your way to school. That gauntlet of kids chanting, "Dirty Jew," led by Rosalie and sallow-skinned Colin. And at the block end stood the daughter of the Nordicas. Just wait till after the war. Hitler will come get you. Your mother told you to walk proudly past. Your name, your curls, your stack of books only inflamed them. Stuck up, salami, sang out Rosalie's voice, jagged as a serrated knife. One snowy morning, they all surrounded you, shouting out catcalls, grabbing your hem. They sent your child's book of garden verses skittering through the snow. Something stronger than bile rose in you, swelling your fists. Stronger than history, names, or myths. You took them on one by one, pushing each of them into the yew hedge lining the street. Dusted off powder, picked up your books, and continued to school. This is sort of a composite. I mean, I don't know if they said that epithet to my aunt, not my mother, but she did fight them off. That part's true. And Rosalie was a real character, apparently. But anyway, they didn't bother after that. Okay, the next poem is on a much lighter note. My mother told me she rode the parachute jump once and only once. And it was so terrifying, Coney Island. It was so terrifying that she never went on it again. So this poem, which is a concrete poem, I don't know if you can see, but it's shaped like a parachute.
Is that what concrete poetry is, the shape?
Yeah.
Yes.
I did concrete poetry naked one time, and I said, what kind of poetry is this? So I said, I have to get naked going.
This went through a lot of revisions to try to get it just right. But it was a lot of fun to write it. So, okay, here goes. Parachute jump. Each turn of the winch lifts you higher, cables clanging beneath the canopy, light bleeds through. Higher and higher, your legs float free, the shoreline, a long creamy wave, Seagate to Coney. The wonder wheel, the carousel, spin lazily round. Time moves slower up here. Will you float down like Mary Poppins over slate-covered roofs, or like anemones at the New York Aquarium? Bubbles rise to the surface and break. People are dots, chocolate sprinkles on a cake. It's time to make a wish and blow. Now the drop begins. Oh no. Wee, 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 wee. Air rushing up your poplin skirt, you can't stop screaming your curly head off, and a young man whistles as you hang in midair. That one started out as a conventionally laid out poem. I thought, no, this has got to be, and I went crazy because I kept, first it looked like a light bulb, then it looked like a lamp, then it looked like, and then, I showed it to my spouse, and he kept, putting the nicks on each version of it. So I got it more or less to where I wanted it. Okay, now I'd like to move to the latest collection. This is Child with the Swan's Wings. This is actually my mother's painting. She was painting
Let's
until
see.
she had a
Close
stroke
up.
about 8 years ago.
Wow.
And this seemed right for the book, so. And again, copies are available at a very good price. If you buy a book, I'm donating the proceeds to Minerva, to the studio. So it'll be very good, $10 for if anyone's interested. You can see me afterwards. Okay, so let me, this book has a lighter, it's a more whimsical book, so I hope you'll all enjoy these poems. Okay, so first poem. The first section is called Bestiary, and so the poems all are about animals or invented creatures or so forth. Okay, so first one is called Arte Poetica, Ars Poetica. The triangle has swallowed the circle. The square has eaten its lines. Circles are chasing their tails through oblivion. Words are packing up and leaving town. Let's go for a ride into language, circling round and round, where a poem will explode from its center, won't ever again be called a poem. Each word tactile, hairy or sweet, will stand like an obelisk in the sand, casting its shadow at midnight, a whirring planet. Open your ears and build a language. Go build your poems. Impossible mobiles suspended upside down, that quivering wind. Iridescent drums sounding underwater, that shout names for the new things, splayed across the vacuum of the sky. We won't reflect the world, we will create it. With these eyes, these ears, these noses, these tongues, these hands. The next one I had a lot of fun with. This is when I worked for many years in an organization that was located on Park Avenue. And when I first arrived there, I was struck by all the women in fur coats and Yorkshire Terriers and doormen in livery and limousines and so forth. And one day I saw this beautiful white poodle glide by, and so it inspired this poem. White standard poodle. Nose poised, out the door, panting discreetly, tugging her chain. She takes the first step onto Park Avenue, past the doorman in livery and gold braid, past the awning with its 4 posts of polished brass. Her thighs sashay like a 60s model down the runway, pulling along the eyes of men, into a stream of herringbone overcoats, women in fox stoles, whiffs of cologne. Coiffed and pom-pommed, a fringe of white fur, bangs coquettishly feathered by the breeze. Julie Christie is a poodle. Her lacquered nails rattle the pavement in a measured clip. Her rhinestone collar gleams. Her trip is one way into society, vistas of granite facades opening and sparkling. So when she moves with the best of them, breasting black limousines.
Oh, wow, Dan.
So this poem has a whole section of poems that were inspired by paintings or works of art. There are some paintings that I love. They've stayed with me for years. And the section is called The Heads of Jeanette. And that's the poem I'd like to read, and it's based on the bust, Matisse's 5 busts in MoMA, which have always fascinated me, and anyway, that's where this poem came from. The Heads of Jeanette, after Matisse's 5 busts. Imagine watching yourself in a mirror 50 years, from an age when chignons were the rage, watching your features growing molten, hair separating into bulbs, a glowing egg that sits on your forehead. Your nose grows longer. Jimmy Durante would envy that nose, cast in bronze. You touch your cheek, and it's like a pond. Your touch runs deep through every era, vaudeville stage to the age of reason, back to the Paleolithic, a cool black mineral gleaming in the sun. You're a dinosaur gawked at by tourists, a plain-faced girl, all cheekbones and hair. 5 personalities, 5 heads, oh Jeanette, a series of planets lined up for eclipse. Imagine traveling through space with 4 weird sisters, a new plateau for every bust, pedestals plummeting to the source, not to Earth, but geometry, an arrangement of cubes and spheres, where logic rules, not your face.
Oh, wow.
It seems to be about transformation. I guess that's what it was about for me. Okay, now for something completely different, as Monty Python used to say. This is now some of these take the titles or borrow the titles of the actual works. So this is a work by Minerva, and the title is "Man and Woman in Front of a Pile of Excrement."
Oh God, really?
Yes, that's the real title, after Minerva. It was your dog. No, it was yours. And so on. Until the neighbors got tired of the shouting, and someone threw a brick. But the bickering reached new heights. It was Lorca summer, orange blossoms and geraniums on the balconies, gypsies snapping their fingers in the plaza. A plump American munching a churro smacked her lips. Then the man lost his balance, almost stepped in it. They flailed their red and yellow arms like fantastic balloons in animal shapes. Your pudendum is a big hairy bird, and your thing is a fish that goes boing, and on, while the pile of excrement posed on its pedestal. Lovely as marble or Greta Garbo tossing her head back in late afternoon light. I had fun with that. Okay, this is a maybe more serious vein. One of the artists that I've always loved for years is Munch, and is painting the Yellow Boat, and this is called the Yellow Boat after Munch. These swirls and the Yellow Boat after Munch. These swirls of sky and shoreline led you from the clustered village, the one white house called home. Forget air through doorways, the cobbled path, the hedge that seals you off. Your head rests in your palm, and there's only sand, only rain on a clear gray lake, a yellow boat. You watch evening fade to mustard, brown, and ochre, how they roll from hill to shoreline, clouds like enormous hands. Forget hands, words, other lands, an old shriek buried deep in your flesh you can't name or release. Once you thought you could walk away clean, dreamt the whole world to paper, a red match held between fingers. Each home flared behind you. Skulls rose to the mirror, their jaws creaking open to speak. And who's calling you now but a child, running free of his shadow? A woman in muslin who wipes your brow clean when you wake, and the edges close in. The yellow hull looks simple on the water. 2 figures stroll toward the end of the pier, down the little steps. A man with oars on his shoulder runs up to bear them away. And then this is a loose sonnet based on that beautiful Tiffany window at the Met called Autumn Landscape. A molten waterfall pours over world rocks, milky boulders bound in cloisonné. Above, a violet pool reflecting peaks, a sky of lemon and rose to make you weep. Birch trunks, sparkling leaves arranged in a bower, flaming foliage, mountains, sky, all designed for guests in a foyer promenading to a meal. What Tiffany named Favril and shaped into forms, iridescent peacock feathers, dogwood blooms, is nothing but glass chips soldered into place, light refracted through panes, translucent, cold. And yet it's something more, something holy or bold. Its sun and colors melting in a pool is something that fires dreams, is glass that flows.
Oh, man.
Okay, I'd like to I'm going to read a few more. This one, there's a section called To the Queen of Merriment. It's got various poems in it. I wish I could read more, but anyway, I'm going to read a poem for my cat. She passed away, but we had a lot of fun. I would iron, and she would lay on the bed, and I'd put on Cole Porter. And this is for my spouse, Marcus Gouveia. Listening to Cole Porter with Lola. Begin the begin, in fact. The CD whirls on the tinny machine. I sing along, ironing my shirt for a special occasion. Let's just pretend. Ruffled sleeves with white pearl buttons, a dinner jacket, cummerbund. Lola's curled up on the bed, on the domino quilt, dreaming lazy feline dreams. When she wakes, she's dressed for the part, tuxedo cat, like Fred Astaire when he enters the ballroom before night and day, and everyone holds their breath, that hush. Black swallowtail frames the starched white bib. But back to Lola, gold-eyed beauty, one eye askew like an imperfect gimlet jewel. She looks straight at me and blinks, or is it a wink? Anything goes. Her one pale whisker now emerging from her forehead, slender antenna. It seems to read the surrounding air. She doesn't care. She yawns, she stretches, she kneads her paws, delicate slippers of Chinese silk dipped in cream. They're just above her. I can't help running my hand across her belly, the fur plush, down her back, all the way to her tail, a sable brush rounded at the tip. She's had enough. Now she's bounding off the bed. Wait, you'll miss the next song. Wunderbar, or is it just one of those things?
Oh.
I'm going to read one more from this book, and then I'm going to read something new. This is a very short poem. It's a found poem. We all hear people on the street saying all kinds of things. And there was a guy in my neighborhood that I used to hear. He had kind of an eccentric personality. I didn't know him. But I heard him on the cell phone one day. So this is Out of the Blue, a man on cell phone, New York City. And then an artificial squirrel zooms down. So I'd like to read the first section of a longer poem. That is my most recent poem. Right now I'm working on some fiction, in fact, and it's set in the 1920s. And I've come across all kinds of interesting historical information. And I found out, and my story is set mostly in Pasadena, California, in the 1920s. And I found out that there was this ostrich farm there called Costin's Ostrich Farm. And apparently it was a huge tourist attraction that lasted for about 50 years. So anyway, this poem sort of arose as a result of that. I'm just going to read the first section. It's sort of a saga, but anyway, to give you an idea of it. The ostrich, feathers and all. Twin drumsticks tapering down to two-toned feet arched tense on the ground. This creature's legs like an athlete's thighs, poised to sprint, or in a different age, with a little more meat and confabulation, Betty Grable's gams. A pair of drumsticks bearing a bundle of muscle and feathers, fluffy wings tucked all around her, like a new kind of fowl, some Turk-induce, chicken, duck, goose, etc. But for now, let's keep traveling up her body. Out of that messy feather duster rises her neck, long and scrawny, a stubbly liana climbing lazily to the sun. High enough to give you vertigo, it arrives at the little fluffed head, perched up there, way up there. It looks so tiny from our perspective, gazing up from the ground. A dreaming head almost lost in the clouds. How does she manage that double world above and below? A head both infantile and prehistoric, and those enormous, liquid black eyes, batting their lashes as only birds or silent film stars know how to flirt. Her beak now opening, an ironic sneer, but all that comes out, instead of a squawk, is a long, low Thanks to Elizabeth, and thanks to the musicians. I meant to say that the flute music was beautiful, and Neil Young was one of my,
Oh,
was
yeah,
and is
my
one of my
favorite.
favorites.
Oh, yeah.
That song is incredible, among others. Thank you. If anybody's interested, I'm selling the books for $10 each.
yes.
Okay.
And again, I'm donating any proceeds to Minerva's student.
And Paul, turn yourself on.
Is that it?
Take your regular, the voice right.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that's right, yeah.
I was gonna do the email, but I don't know.
Oh, no. Minerva